Hey, friends. This is Martine Williams, and I am obsessed with all things mompreneur life and helping you to remix your priorities, your habits, your mindsets, and yes, even your relationships so that you can build a successful business without losing yourself in the process. I'm also obsessed with the color turquoise and lyrics of the 80s and 90s, but that's beside the point. Girlfriend, you don't have to hustle 24/7, 365 and continue to sacrifice your health, your relationships, and your sanity to be a successful mompreneur. As a small town girl living in a lonely world to a six-figure mompreneur, I am here to teach you how. There is a better way, and this podcast is your one-stop shop for all of the how-tos, the encouragement, the life hacks, the success tips, and of course, a little side of tough love. This is the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. So let's do this. Well, hey friends, I am super excited about today's guest. That is another Turquoise Talk guest, and we're going to kind of continue talking about money mindset. And we've done a couple of episodes on this in April, and I'm excited to kind of continue the conversation because I know it's something that I have personally struggled with as a mompreneur. And I think a lot of women struggle with this idea of success and worthy of success, maybe some money mindsets that are not serving you to grow your business or to accept success. And she just got a really cool story about her journey from corporate into entrepreneurship. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Tania Vasallo is the host of the Courage to Be podcast and the founder of the Courage to Be Happy, a global community of high-achieving women entrepreneurs working to become financially empowered and independent. She also hosts Increase Your Income and Impact, her signature live event to help women expand their businesses and mindsets. That sounds amazing. Born to a Spanish father and an American mother and raised in Spain, Tanya was constantly in search of freedom from the patriarchal society. She now specializes in transforming a mindset of lack to a mindset of abundance and prosperity so that her clients discover their own autonomy in their personal and financial choices. With her guidance, her first Money Magic Miracles cohort of 28 women made over $1.2 million collectively in just 8 weeks. Tanya lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico with her husband, daughter, and multiple pets. So tune in, grab your pen and paper, or put your earbuds, AirPods, whatever you want to call them in, and let's do this. Well, welcome back, friends, to the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast. Today's episode is another Turquoise Talk guest. You know, I love having these guests on. We were just talking about how it's just amazing the amount of people that we get to meet by hosting a podcast, and the stories and how inspirational they are, and just being able to share the mompreneur journey and what you've learned and where you're headed and all of the in between. So thank you so much, Tanya, for coming on to the podcast today. We're super excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here, Martine. Thank you so much for having me.
And I love her accent. I know you're probably thinking the same thing about mine, but I love your accent.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about, you and I literally just met, and we had a great conversation before we started recording. But for those that are listening, can you tell us just a little bit about you, your family, how you became an entrepreneur, and just a little bit about that.
The story. So my career started out in advertising as an art director. I used to work in New York City for multi-million-dollar accounts like Samsung, Starbucks, AT&T, Nabisco. And that was my corporate life. And it got to a point where from the outside in, it looked very glamorous. You know, here you are, an art director traveling the world, staying, luxury hotels, traveling first class, managing, teams, shooting TV commercials and stuff. But inside, I longed for more freedom. Mm-hmm. And I also consider myself a multi-passionate person. So while I was working as an art director, I was getting my life coaching certification, which was at the beginning of the 2000s. So not a lot of people, I was doing it online. It was one of the first places that you could do it online and coach you. And I knew I wanted to leave corporate. I just was longing for this freedom. So I quit my job. My husband did too, who was also an art director in New York City. And we moved back to Spain, where I'm from originally, without a job, and started a studio. We decided to start a little studio where we offered all types of creative services, from branding, graphic design, photography. And we ran the studio for several years in Spain, then moved back to the States and landed in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I currently live. And we ran the studio for a couple of years there too. But here's the thing: when you have two creatives with no business training, the studio was just getting by. It was a lot of like feast and famine. I don't know if you can relate to this. You know, some months were just like, yay, we just landed that client. And then another month would be like, oh my God, our savings is dwindling. We're going to go have to get that job. Yeah. And at one point, after running it for like 5-6 years, my husband looked at me. He's like, I don't think I want to run the studio anymore. And I'm like, he's like, I just want to do my art. And I'm like, that's awesome. Because in a way, I kind of just wanted to do my own thing. It's hard when you have two creatives, you know, like our job descriptions weren't that determined. We didn't like, I felt like I had a bigger calling. And by running it together, it just wasn't working out for us. So anyway, we kind of stopped the studio, but there was a lot of soul searching at that point. You know, I was like, well, what should I do? Because again, multi-passionate. I had every degree and certification in the self-development world. Like I'd done Louise Hay's, You Can Heal Your Life certification, Jack Canfield's Success Principles, Landmark Education, like you name it, I had done it. I was certified to be able to teach that. But I also was a photographer, and I also was an art director. I'm like, how do I bring all of this together and blend it? Yeah. And I had just become a mom. I had an 18-month-old in hand, and my sister calls me up and says, hey, I have a ticket to a 3-day event in San Diego. So I'm like, ooh, I'm perking up, about sales. And I'm like, wah, wah. You know, I'm like, okay, San Diego sounded awesome. 3 days sounded great, but sales, seriously? Like I'm a creative, you know, like I'm picturing this event full of people in business suits, you know, boring as hell. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's my thing. She's like, no, come on. You know, like all you need to do is pay for your plane ticket. I have a hotel room already. We can stay together. I already have a ticket because you get a guest ticket or whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I so don't want to go to a sales thing. You know, like that's the last thing, even though I don't know what I want to do. But I said, the worst that can happen is that I hate it. And I can at least lounge at the pool for 3 days and take a break from mommyhood. So I said, yes. And I went and I got to the event and it blew my mind. It had nothing to do with what I had imagined. Like all these veils started getting pulled up from me. Like up to that point, even though we're running a business, I think I considered myself a freelancer. I never really considered myself an entrepreneur. Like entrepreneurs to me were like brick and mortar, making millions of dollars. You know, like I had just this concept of what an entrepreneur was. And I got to meet incredible people making 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, 7 figures. I was like, wow, you know, people are really making that much money. And how are they doing it? And service-based. So I met incredible people. And at the end of that 3rd day, the facilitator of the event made an offer to join her mastermind. And it was a $20,000 investment. And my jaw dropped. It was just like one of those like, oh my God, I so want to do it, but I don't have the money. You know, like that's where the first place your mind goes to. Yeah. But when you have that calling and you just know, you know, it's like when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. And I knew that's what I need. That was like the next thing I needed. So I put down the whatever, $1,000 deposit. I'm like, I'll figure out, you know, like I'm resourceful. I'll figure out where the money comes from. And I kind of saw it honestly now in hindsight, even though it was really scary, I saw it as an investment, kind of like when you go to college or you do an MBA. I'm like, I never studied business, you know, and how much would I pay for going to do an MBA at a university? You know, it's upward of $100,000, $200,000. So I'm like, I'll figure this out. So I did. And the moment you invest at that level for yourself, because there's so much on the line, I attended every single class. I implemented everything that was taught during those classes. I went to those events, even though my daughter was young at that time. You know, I'd make the sacrifices of time, energy, money And I'd go out to these 3-day live events, somewhere in Arizona, somewhere in California, and then have to make up because my husband had stayed with my daughter for those 3 days, and he's like, well, that's not fair that you got to take off for 3 days, and I'm like, okay, you're right. So then you'd have that time, that extra time that you have to make up. But here's what happened. There was soul searching. I was like, what am I doing? And so I launched what at that point, the business was called The Courage to Be Happy. We are transitioning this year and it's now The Courage to Be, but it was The Courage to Be Happy. And I started teaching women about the things I already knew, which was branding. So I hosted live events about how to create a successful brand. And that's what I started with what I knew. Within 4 years, just working 20 hours a week, because I had the little one, right. We all know as moms, like your time is limited. So you have to really prioritize. Only working 20 hours a week. And the first year or two, I was on social media, but that's not how I marketed my business, because the last two, I was off. I've been off of social media for 4 years before this past year, but I was able to hit a 6-figure revenue. Right. And I share that because it's important to know that, wow, like I hit this milestone. I only, like this was a belief that I had in my head that you have to work really hard to be successful or to make a certain revenue or make certain money. Like it just blew my mind that I was able to replace my advertising paycheck. Like it's like, oh my God, I made more money working for myself than I did in corporate. Yeah. And so ever since it just, it opened up. Like I said, I've been investing for all these years, thousands of dollars in my education and coaches and teachers. And I started teaching branding. Then it shifted into business strategy because a lot of the women I was working with were like, well, how did you do that? What are your systems? What are you putting in place? And so I started teaching business strategy. And then what my year-long class, one of the classes I started incorporating was money mastery, like starting to understand our money mindset. Because as I was learning, as I was healing on my journey with my relationship with money, I became fascinated to the blocks that we all had. My own clients, colleagues that were making 6 figures, 7 figures, there's still money blocks. It doesn't matter what level you're at. There's still money blocks. There's limiting beliefs. There's self-sabotaging. And I just wanted to learn more and more about this, So again, I surrounded myself with teachers, mentors that knew about finances, that knew about psychology, that knew about the metaphysical from a spiritual perspective too, So I just kept observing and learning these things. And so I now specialize in business strategy with an emphasis on money mindset. And get this, I just launched my podcast this year. And in the first 3 weeks, I was ranking in the top 5%. We are only at I think by week 10 or 11, it's already ranking in the top 2.5% podcasts worldwide. Yeah. And it's also ranking number 38 in Spain, where I'm from originally, without a single episode in Spanish. So I feel in such alignment right now with podcasting, and anyone that's not using podcasting as part of their marketing strategy and their business, I think they're leaving a lot of money on on the table. Yeah. So even though I've been focusing on business strategy, even though I've been emphasizing on money mindset, I'm now going in this direction of podcasting and supporting other women so that more women's voices are heard through podcasting, whether they're guests, whether they want to launch a podcast or they're already podcast hosts. Yeah. So that's where I'm at right now. And that's where the journey's taken me, and you just kind of keep following the breadcrumbs and see where it leads you to.
Well, a couple of things that you said that I want to make sure the listeners kind of take in. And number one is that you didn't have all the answers and you didn't know exactly what you were going to do, but you started. And there's a lot of brilliant ideas that get left on the table because people are just afraid to start. They just, they need to have all the answers, or what if this and what if that, what if I fail, all of those things. And you felt called to do something different, to leave corporate or to close up the shop, or, that things weren't working out, with you and your husband kind of working together. So you had the awareness, but then a lot of us have the awareness, but we have the fear to take that first step. And so I just want the listeners to really hear that look at the first step you took and look at where you are now. And everything you did in between with investing also is the second thing I want to make sure listeners heard, was that you invested even when you were like, that's a lot of money, And I remember my first few investments and they weren't that. I mean, I have invested that, but they weren't that, the very first one. And it still was like, can I do this? Am I going to get my return on my time invested and my money invested? And so a lot of the thought processes that go into making that first scary investment, whether it's in a course or a coach or a mentorship or a mastermind, or even just getting the help you need to outsource some of the things that you're doing, it's scary to make that first investment, but it's necessary because look at where you are now.
That's exactly it, Martine. Thank you for emphasizing that, because I think that's the difference between the people that do succeed versus the ones that don't, that just get stuck because they're too much in their head and you're trying to process it and you're allowing the fears that are in our head, because the fear it's in our head. It comes from our amygdala. It comes from our reptilian brain. It's trying to keep us safe, from, thousands and thousands of years. It's doing its job, but you have to try and override that with courage. And no matter what it is that's being presented, whether it's investment of time, investment of support, that's such a big one too, especially for women, because we're so resourceful. We can figure it out ourselves. Like if I can clean the house, why should I hire a cleaner? If I can edit my own podcast, why should I hire an editor? If I could do admin work and schedule my appointments, why should I hire anyone else? But you really do have to look at what's your hourly time worth? Like what's your hourly rate? If you want to make, I don't know, $100,000 a year working 40 hours a week, everyone's situation is different. Maybe you want to make 100,000 only working 20 hours a week. Do the math, and what's your worth? If that comes down to like $130 an hour, then any task that you could outsource that's less than $130 an hour, you should not be doing. It's such a great reminder of overcoming our fears. You're not going to figure it out beforehand, and definitely get the support. I mean, when you were saying the support, that took me years. I do have to say, anyone that's listening, if you're like, oh my God, but I don't have the money, I can't afford it, because that's usually the first place our mind goes to. I really do suggest go slowly. I've always had someone that comes and cleans our home for the last 20 years, even in New York when our apartment was small. And yes, it was not in our budget. And maybe the talk I would tell myself is like, I can't afford a person every week, but we'd figure out, we're like, okay, we can't do it for everyone for a week, for the price point, but what if they came once a month?
Yeah.
What if they came and then you build up once a month, then it's like every 2 weeks. And then once you get a taste of that, you'll start figuring out where to find the money so that you don't have to clean the house or you don't have to edit your podcast or whatever it is that you're doing, or getting a VA. Like I started slowly with that too. I'm like, okay, I'm getting a virtual assistant 5 hours a month.
Yeah.
And then it built and it was 10 hours a month. And then you make a little bit more and you're like, oh my God, I'm seeing all the help and how much this is opening up.
Yeah.
So anyway, I know we got a little bit deviated, but I think it's important to emphasize that as you're saying, as you were mentioning it, Martine.
Yeah. And like you said, I think just starting small, and maybe it's just a mommy's helper that comes in a couple of days a week to watch the kids so you can, do those things in your business. I mean, I think we can sometimes get trapped in that all or nothing mentality. Like if I'm not paying a full-time person, like what's the point, right? Or if I don't have all these things for someone to do, but there's definitely something that you're paying yourself that you could pay someone else to do, right? That gives them a job, gives them an opportunity to make some income and frees you up to do the things that only you can do. And that's just really important to kind of take note. Hey friend. So you have been trying to make some shifts this year. Maybe you set some resolutions and you're just feeling stuck. You don't feel like you're making progress, or you're just not sure what to do. And you've heard me say this before, but being stuck is a mindset, not a position. And this is where a coach comes in to support you. Because here's what I know to be true about you, friend. If you could have done it alone, you would have already done it, period. And as a life coach and a certified PDP professional, I specialize in using a research-based personality and performance survey called the ProScan to illuminate how your unique personality and natural strengths, your work and life environments are influencing real-time performance. So here's what you need to do. Go to the link in the show notes and book your free clarity call to learn more about how I can support you in your goals. I can't wait to illuminate your strengths, cultivate your confidence, and elevate your life. So what would you say are some ways that women are not making the most of that hard-earned money?
You mean like reinvesting in themselves, or like from a personal perspective?
Like they're working hard, they're making this money, and they're just not making the most of that, whether it's pouring it back into the business or pouring it into like maybe a mentorship or a coach or something like that. Like they're making the money, but they're just not capitalizing on what they're making.
Yeah, because we could be working, and as much as it comes in, it goes right out.
Yeah.
So we really want to be conscious and aware of what's important to us, as you're making the money. Like, why are you wanting to make the money? Like you hear a lot of people like, oh, I want to be a millionaire. I want to make $1 million. Okay, great. For what?
Right.
Because no one really wants the money for the sake of the money. Money is just a tool, it's just, it facilitates a lifestyle. It gives you opportunities. So the bigger question that I would say for those listening and that you're asking, like, how do I capitalize on this, is ask yourself the question, what do you want to use it for? Like what's important to you?
Yeah.
Is it that you want to travel? Is it that you want more freedom? Like you want more time off to spend with your kids and your family? Is it that you want to learn? I'm an avid learner. Like a big portion of mine now is like, I'll always be reinvesting or investing money and learning, because here's the thing, learning, I'll be an eternal learner. Like until the day I die, I know I will be learning something new. I don't know if it'll be business, if it'll be money, if it'll be a ceramics class, whatever it is. But you want to keep yourself alive with curiosity. Like it doesn't end at the end of you finish college and then now I don't want to learn anything the rest of my life. Right. You're going to be dying. There's only two ways to go in life. You're either growing or you're dying. There's just no in between. So for me, for example, learning is an important aspect of it, because anything you learn, those are tools that you have for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. Like you take a podcasting course. Now you have that for the rest of your life, no matter how, or even like take that investment that was 20 grand, whatever, like that mastermind, the return on investment on that, you might not get it right away. Right. You're like, oh, well, I'm only going to invest in a $3,000 program if I can make that $3,000 immediately in the first year. Yeah. Well, life doesn't work like that. Yeah. I wish it did, because then I'd be putting all my money in the market, in the stock market. They say that, like that you put money in the stock market and you get if you get an 8 to 10% return per year, you're doing pretty good. So think of it the same with something you're learning. Okay. I invested $3,000. Yeah. And the first year, if I make 300 back, that's 10%. Yeah. I've done pretty good. I outdid the stock market. Yeah. Or if you made 600 from what you learn in that course in that first year, now you've made 20%. That's a lot more than you would have made if you took those 3,000 put into the stock market. But here's the thing, anything you're learning and that course, if you're implementing, obviously, because a lot of us like to soak up books or
we can be like life learners and learn, but we're not implementing. So then we're not earning.
Yes. So that's crucial too. And that would be like the second point to this. But say you did make $600 from that $3,000 course in that first year, but maybe the second year you make 3,000. Now suddenly you've made 100% year 2. Yeah. What about year 3? What about year 10? Like none of us look back on that and be like, oh yeah, that investment was an awesome investment because it keeps on giving me fruits because you have this knowledge for the rest of your life. So for me personally, one of the biggest things is reinvest your money in learning. We tend to do it for our kids, especially as moms. We're like, oh no, I'm putting that money, for my kids' horseback riding classes because that's, it's very expensive and it's more important for them. Because my daughter goes to horseback riding and I look at that, but sometimes I also have to balance it out and say like, well, if I'm investing that amount for your horseback riding, I'm going to invest that amount for myself because I deserve it. And on top of that, I'm the pillar of this family, one of the pillars that needs to keep on regenerating. Right. So I do invite people to consider reinvesting and capitalizing the money that they're making on learning new things that excite them. It might be business. And then there's certain parts in business that don't excite us, like when I was running the business with my husband, two creatives, because we'd rather invest that money in things regarding our craft, like maybe you're a life coach and you're like, oh, I want to learn anything self-development, and you'll put all the money into self-development courses. Mm-hmm. But if you are running a business, you do have to, you're not going to achieve success in business without investing into mentors and teachers in business and courses regarding business. You will not grow it, like your marketing, all these other things. It just won't happen. It'll happen, but it'll be much slower. Like what you could maybe achieve in 1 year, it might take you 5 to 10.
Yeah. And it's almost like, yes, like you said, we're women, we figure things out, but it takes longer, and it's a lot more like, there's a lot more opportunity for the negativity to come in and for the self-sabotage and the wrong money mindsets to come in when you're trying to do it alone. And when you're trying to just hustle your way there. And if you didn't know, like I'm definitely a hard worker, but I'm anti-hustle 24/7, 365, that the culture has built around entrepreneurship, because I've seen too many women sacrifice their own health, their own marriages, their own relationships on that altar of success. And so that's my big passion, is like, we're going to work hard, but we're going to make sure, number one, we're working hard for the right thing, and that we're leaving space and time for yourself and the other things that you're actually doing your business for. Like, what's the point of you doing all that hustling when you get to the end of wherever you think you've arrived success, and you're looking back and there's no one there to enjoy it with because you've sacrificed your family on that altar, or you're sick and you can't even fully enjoy it. So I think it's really important to, like you said, really, what is important to you? Like, where do you want to put your money? It's never about the money. It's about what the money will do. My coach has always said that to me, and I've kept that in my pocket all my entrepreneur journey. So that also helps you on the days when you just don't feel like doing those business things, right? If you are that creative brain, you're like, oh, but I still got to know the numbers, and I still got to do the strategy and all of those things. When you know why you're doing those things and where you're going to invest that money back into, that really just kind of helps to motivate and kind of keep you moving forward. So as someone who's worked with entrepreneurs and money mindset, what would you say are like the money mindsets that are holding people back the most, that you've kind of had them work through?
That's so good. And you just basically set it up for me with the working hard and the hustle, because that's, I'd say, one of the biggest ones, especially for women, because of patriarchy, and how the world's been set up for us. Men have to work hard too, and some of them have had that mindset. But on top of that, we need to prove ourselves even more, like our value. It's like, oh, well, let me work even harder. Let me get more degrees. Let me do the, so where maybe a man might have only worked, 40 hours a week, just to give an example. A woman might have to work 60 hours a week to prove herself. And if you're a minority, even more, because there haven't been examples of that before, like there's not belief that you can do something like this. So working hard is definitely one of the biggest money mindsets or limiting beliefs that I've seen. I still carry it. And here's the other thing too, with limiting beliefs with money. Just because you hear this today on the podcast, maybe you heard it for the first time, and that's awesome. If you listen to it for the first time, kudos to you. It means that it's in your awareness. You need to start paying attention to this. So that's great.
Yeah.
Maybe you read it in a book. Maybe you heard it on another podcast. Maybe you're hearing it for the second, third, or fifth time. Money beliefs don't get dissolved, or your relationship healing your relationship with money is not a one-stop shop thing. Yeah. It's not like, oh, I listened to that podcast. I uncovered it. I'm aware. Yeah, I have this thing of working hard for money. Like I identify with what Tanya is saying, like I definitely have that. It's ongoing work until the day you die. Because here's the thing,
Yeah.
It's money. It's like having a relationship with our body and our health.
Yeah.
You can't not have a relationship with your body or your health. You can ignore it, but that's still being in relationship. It's like a relationship if I ignore you. And so there's going to be consequences to that. If you ignore what you're putting into your body, then there's going to be a consequence. You'll gain weight. You might be diabetic. You might, you might have an early heart attack, whatever it is. The same thing is with money. You have a relationship with money because money touches everything on this planet. Unless you live in the Amazons and you're fishing and catching your own thing and you build your home, you're the only one that's exempt. Everyone else, if you're listening to this podcast, most likely you don't fall in that category of being in the Amazon. So you have to have a relationship with money, and you want to look into it and pay attention and say, what are my beliefs of money? What was taught to me about money by my parents, by my teachers, by my church, by my synagogue, by the media, by the culture. I was born and raised in Spain. The messages about money and that culture are very different than the American culture. Right. Some overlap, some are different. So when you start questioning all these things, you start seeing that we all have a lot of common money beliefs. So the first one that I see is you have to work hard for money. And I'm prefacing this, and that's why I said all this, because I still have that.
Yeah.
So it's not like I fixed it. I've been working on this for decades. What it does do is it helps you overcome when the new financial obstacle shows up, like you get an IRS bill that was unexpected, or, you have, I don't know, debt of some sort. And you're like, okay, I have a different level of awareness than I did 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be panicking now, because now I'm seeing my debt as a tool to help me build my business.
Right.
I'm not seeing it as consumer debt. So you have new levels of awareness, new concepts. And so, like, for example, with working hard, what these money beliefs do is you self-sabotage. And so, for example, for working hard for money, I have found myself, like, I might be in the middle of a launch or something, like, I don't know, like I was promoting something as an affiliate. And I just couldn't believe that I worked so little. Like, I just put this like email campaign, maybe it took me an hour at the most, and the $5,000 came in.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, is that even possible? So you start subconsciously, it's not like you sit down, because you'd be like, oh, well, why is she so stupid to create more work with it? But subconsciously, you're like, let me complicate it. Let me add more emails to this. Like, this doesn't make sense. Or maybe because of the way it came in, and so you start complicating it and you start adding more work to yourself, because the limiting belief that you have in your brain is, I have to work hard for money. Yeah. This is almost too easy. Like, how did this, it's almost like, or another big one that comes in, people that make a lot of money or have just recently gotten a bonus or a raise, or maybe they inherited money. If they have a limiting belief of money is bad, or money is the root of all evil, or people with money are bad, I can guarantee you those people, you got a bonus or you got a raise, or you suddenly you're making more money. They doubled your salary. You switched jobs and you have or you got a new client. Your expenses will raise up to the new level of what you're making. Yeah. Or an unexpected bill or come, like, oh, the car broke down, we need a new car. And so all that money that you suddenly made, it goes right out, because you have that limiting belief. And so why? Because you're self-sabotaging. If you grew up with the belief people with money are bad or people with money are corrupt, why would you want to hold on to money? Right. You're like, oh, shoot, I just inherited this
possible. Big. Yeah. It's got to be gone as soon as possible.
It's important to keep these in mind, because what if you did receive a big chunk of money? Whether you won the lottery, whether you inherited, whether you got a bonus, whether you worked for it, if you haven't healed your relationship with money, you're going to lose it right away. So it's so important to heal that. Another big one that I see is that I'm not deserving. We don't do that with other, what do we say, with other assets in the world. Like, for example, with air, water, you don't go around, I don't know, walk into a room and you're like, oh my God, there's like 10 people in here. I shouldn't breathe really strong because I'm going to be taking air from someone else, or I'm not deserving of this much air.
Yeah.
Let me just take little breaths because air is not, I don't know why we do it with money or with water. It's the same thing. It's like your body needs a certain amount of water to replenish itself, to live off of. And it's like you go and you drink when you need it and it flows. The air flows, the water flows. And money is the same thing. It's just abundance. And so we are all deserving of money and we are all deserving of abundance. And we live in an abundant world. Right. That's one of the biggest things that I help my clients. Like I launched a program that was called Money Magic Miracles. Mm-hmm. And one of the main things that I teach in that program is how to shift the mindset from there's never enough, because we're in this, like, there's not enough money in my bank account. There's not enough, in my savings. There's not enough. There's always this not enoughness, to start shifting our mindset to seeing all the abundance around us. Yeah. There's plenty of everything. There's plenty of trees. There's plenty of water. There's plenty of animal species. There's plenty of everything. Yeah. Nature works its way. It knows how to do it. And it's the same with money. There's trillions of dollars rolling around, flowing in the world right now, bank account to bank account. Yeah. Why not get a little bit of that? Right. So I'd say, just to summarize, I'm not deserving. I have to work hard for money. People with money are bad. There's also another one, like, I'm too spiritual to concern myself with money, or money, it doesn't bring you happiness, like almost like it's either or. Yeah. Like you can't be spiritual and have money, or you can't be happy and have money. That's also another limiting belief. Yeah. Why can't you have both? How awesome. Be happy, have money, and flow it out there to other people. Yeah. And I'm trying to think, there's so many, and many of them are intertwined. It's not like you just have different levels of it. Yeah. Yeah. There's levels of different. And so you do want to pay attention to that. You want to pay attention to, what are my limiting money beliefs and where did they come from? Yeah. And then the third step would be, once you become aware of it, because maybe you've never even heard this conversation, that you're hearing this for the first time and you're like, oh my God, I never even thought of that. Yeah. Because they don't teach us at schools. They do not teach us to question our beliefs. Yeah. And our beliefs are so rooted. I mean, if you grew up in a particular religion, whether it's Christianity or Judaism or whatever, your parents, like it's ancestral. Yeah. So why would you even question that? It's like, no, I believe that. Yeah. But have you ever questioned your religion? Have you ever questioned your health? Like that you can only eat a certain amount of things, or, have you ever questioned your money? So these are important topics, especially because all our money beliefs are mostly generated from the moment we're born to age 7. Yeah. It just gets dumped in our subconscious. Our conscious mind is still not formed. Yeah. So you can't really question it because you're just taking it in. That's why they say kids are like sponges. You're taking in what you're seeing, what you're hearing. Are your parents fighting about money, or are they happy about money? Were you a spoiled kid, or did you guys struggle with money? Mm-hmm. What were your teachers saying about money? What were the comments your parents were saying about the uncle that was rich? Is he corrupt because he, and so all of that is in your subconscious mind. It's like having a computer. Your brain is like a computer that has all that programming in it. Yeah. And if you've never questioned it because you've never done a class, or you've never wanted to learn about, your own beliefs about money, most likely your 6-7-year-old is running your financial situation or running even your business right now because you're coming from those places. Yeah.
And a lot of times when you start peeling back the onion and you start really investigating some of these things and asking yourself these questions, it does bring up some other things, right, that probably need to be dealt with. So I think for a lot of people, it's just that slowing down process to even ask the question feels scary, because they're like, but then I'm going to have to go back to that season of my life and heal that and deal with that. But that's always beneficial to have that healing regardless. So you have to take that time. And I think we're in this culture again, where we're just moving so fast that we don't allow ourselves to, like you said, question what we're believing. Question, just because the thought is there doesn't mean that that's the thought that needs to stay there. You change your thoughts, you can change your feelings, and you can change your actions, which, changes your results. So It's like you have to slow down long enough to say, okay, is this thought that I have about money or this belief I have about money, is it serving me? Is it not serving me? If it isn't serving me, then how can I do the work to release that and put a new thought and a new belief about money? And I know for women, I do think it is a lot around, well, who am I to charge this for my services? Who am I to have this financial success? Like they just don't feel that worthiness to charge a certain price or to accept that payment from someone. And so I love the work that you're doing. And I know that this brings a lot of awareness to just taking that time to think about those beliefs and around money. And like you said, for some of them, we've been actually the last few episodes, we've been talking about this, and it may be for the first time someone's even thinking about what their relationship is to money. And that's the first step. Like you said, is just having that awareness. So we could talk for probably 3 more hours on this topic. But we do know people have very short attention spans. So maybe I can have you come back on the podcast and we'll deep dive into some other things. But tell me what you're most excited about right now in your business and what you have coming up.
Yeah. Right now I am super excited about supporting women's voices through podcasting. Mm-hmm. Like that's the next step. I still host my Money Magic Miracles cohorts couple times a year. I'm also doing my Increase Your Income and Impact signature event in June. But after that, it's just gathering more women and have our voices heard through this platform, which you've been part of for years now, Martine. And I think it's wonderful, that you're putting this work out into the world because it's such a great opportunity for women to have their voices heard. Yeah. We've been quieted for many centuries and it's scary. That's scary too, of like, oh my God, I have to become visible and talk and
hear my own voice. There. And some of y'all just don't like to hear your own voice, but it's okay. Yes. I don't really go back and listen to a lot of my episodes. So I'm not listening.
I don't listen to them.
My own voice, but there's someone out there that needs to hear what you have to say. Someone needs to hear your story. Someone needs to hear your story of struggle, but also your story of overcoming, your story of, I was fearful of this, or stories are so important for people to hear because it helps all of us to take off the mask of, I have to have it all together all the time. And I think a podcast is a great way for people to hear, yes, your success, but there's always a mess before the success. And that's what they want to hear. And the podcast platform gives those women the opportunity to do that in the comfort of their own home or studio or wherever they want to do it. And you can edit it. So if there's something you don't like that you don't say, you can edit it out. It's not a big deal. So I love that you're going to be helping more women be on the podcast platform. I'm a huge fan of podcasts, obviously. So if you had the opportunity, and you kind of do right now, to talk to all the mompreneurs of the world listening here on this podcast, what's one thing you would want them to know?
Just keep on moving forward, find the support with other women, with other moms. I feel like we're the pillars of our communities, of our families, then of our communities, and then at the world at large. So our work in the world matters, not just as moms, but if you're a mompreneur, you have more to give and you have a big impact to have, even if it might not feel like it's a huge thing initially, but there's a ripple effect with it. So just keep on going, getting the support, finding the right communities, and where we can keep on cheering each other on.
Yeah. And just take that first step like Tanya did. Without having to know all the answers, just take that first step. And you may not be, she's not where she was when she first started. And it's just part of the journey. And thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today and sharing so much great information on money mindset. And we will put links to all of her information for you to connect with her. Anything she has going on that she wants you to connect with, we'll put all the links in our show notes. And I know you all will connect with her. And thank you so much for coming on the show. This was great.
Thank you, Martine. I so appreciate it. And thank you to everyone listening.
Awesome. All right, friends. Well, I'll catch you on the next episode. And you know that I'm believing in you always. Well, that's a wrap, friends, for this week's episode of the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. Thank you so much for listening and for following the show. It means so much to me. And listen, friend, sharing is caring. So if you loved this episode and thought of some fellow mompreneurs who could benefit, send them the link. Share this episode or take a screenshot and head on over to Instagram and share and tag me at Martine31Williams. We are connected on Instagram, right? It's where you will get all the fun behind the scenes of my life and business as a mompreneur. Until next time, know that I am believing in you always.